there's certainly an important point to be noted in the sort of the final recommendations and conclusions. There seems to be quite a lot of discussion on the advisory. Perhaps well, sort of seems to be a variance of views to be in a primary act and how much perhaps should be a separate regulation. But we can perhaps produce both of those documents just so it's a little bit clearer how that might work. There also seems to be quite a bit of discussion on the right of appeal, which I thought was very useful. I think a couple of things really to comment on. But I think actually there is a very good justification for perhaps specifying the process, or making sure, for example, that whereas the appeal against licensing is more of an administrative thing. So, in my view, they should both sort of still be kept separate. But we certainly look at that as well. A couple of people mentioned the conflict between the sort of appeal processes in the Act and Regulation 14 in the regulations, which is that mistake, to be honest. I should have removed Regulation 14. Apologies for distracting you with that. It's going to be form part of the protocol, so we're still actually working on that protocol, but that is included within the sort of regulatory framework. It's just not, it's a technical, one of the technical protocols rather than in here. And then finally, I sort of said I wouldn't go through every point, but most of them. Just on the sort of governance, there's a few questions about the sort of MOU and just to mention in terms of the sort of the MOU and to the comments raised. Are there any further comments and questions just before perhaps I try and sort of wrap up a little bit? Any what I want, sorry, yes, I can't see the country. Jamaica, no, Jamaica.
Or verify the fish is legal, it can go anywhere. And I think the IUU issue must take as a prerequisite before it can be fish. We have to make sure it passes that test. And if protocols are not in place to address that, we can have the best system in the world. And that, to me, is the crux of the matter moving forward. Standard of IUU fishing in essence. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, actually I agree with that. In fact, the traceability protocol that we're developing includes catch certification requirements for IUU fishing. So I think, I mean, it's not an SPS matter, but it makes, you've got to deal with both together, because you're right, if you haven't got one, it doesn't really matter about the other. So, and I think that's the traceability protocol. What I haven't really perhaps picked up on is the need, the sort of the linkages in terms of the governance. So a bit more, I think.
TheCRFM. If I may start out with my following up on the point that St. Kitts need this raise. Trade measures are increasingly being used to combat IUU fishing. So I think there I think a lot of that again is EU trade. Part of the process. So just we could address we are affected by it, and there are various tools. There is the tools that But in addition, here we have an additional review process, and that is the courts. So if the establishment or the person is not happy with the minister, the legislative review process is a complex one. It's usually a long process, and it's a unique, not unique, but it's an opportunity, a rare opportunity for us to get it right. We have to be thinking not just in the short term, because the primary legislation is very difficult to change. Very difficult. It takes a long time in most cases in the region, in particular. And so we have to be thinking about something that will have a shelf life of 30, 50 years. And so we have to be careful to make sure we cover not just the immediate challenges and problems that we're facing today, but we have to be thinking ahead 30 years, 40 years, what is the situation likely to be, and can this still be useful? And so we want to make sure that the legislation, particularly the primary legislation, is as flexible as we can make it, and at the same time define and clearly establish the enabling environment for the legislation and protocol and other secondary laws to be enacted to deal with the situation now as well as in the future. And this is a big concern that I have, because we need to go through very carefully. I suppose in the wrap-up session, we will talk a little more about the process forward, because at this stage, we are really just at the beginning. We're really at the beginning, and there's still a lot more to be done before these documents are finalized. So we're dealing and discussing legislation and the secondary legislation at the same time, and sometimes we get the impression that these are more or less on the same level, but they're not. They are significantly different. And in terms of we can be in serious trouble. And I think we have to do everything at this point to avoid that type of situation. And we have had situations in the region where there are regulations that are in operation now that legal experts believe to be ultra-virus in the primary act. And we have had situations where the courts have pronounced some of these regulations to be ultra-virus and just wrong. So we are increasingly governed by the rule of law, and we have to make sure that this is structured properly. So these are just general comments, but I think they're very useful in guiding us forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for those comments. Just, I'll perhaps take some more comments, then perhaps wrap up at the end, just in terms of time efficiency. Barbados wants to.
Thank you very much. Just to follow on what said, I think I want to reiterate what I said at the beginning, that you really need to have a document that clearly articulates your thoughts behind how this legislation is drafted. Because even though you have given us the act in response to one of the questions, you say that that's not a standalone, that may fit into another piece of the overarching act, and then whatever. So seeing this, some of them say, well, this is an act that stands alone, not seeing that. That's why you have to very clearly articulate, because when we take this document to a legal person, we need to understand your thoughts behind how you drafted this piece of legislation and how it fits with other things. So we have the secondary legislation, which are all the protocols, etc., and then the act under which these secondary legislations fall will have to be referred to in that. And if what you prepared is just a part of that full thing, that needs to be clarified. So I just want to say that.
Yeah,
To make it very clear.
I think that would be helpful. That document, I think we'll add in terms of we've had a very good discussion, and thank you again for looking at these documents with vigour. Part of the objective of this workshop is to sort of validate the documents or the process, and I think I wanted just to sort of summarise, or try to summarise, what I think the sort of feeling of the room is. And if I get it wrong, feel free to jump up or shout at me or something. But I think probably it's fair to say that it's recognised that there needs to be sort of development of the legislation, there needs to be development of national governance, and there needs to be development of regional governance. I think on the whole, we seem to sort of get I think a sort of positive response to the overall recommendation we made about the sort of arrangement of the regional, the sort of key steps in the regional governance mechanism, the key steps in the national governance mechanism. I think we've got one or two little gaps in there that you've asked us to fill. So we'll think a little bit more about, for example, the role of the advisory committee. We'll think a little bit more about perhaps the coordination at the regional level. So I think there's a little bit of tweaking, I think, in terms of what we've presented so far. But I think overall the room seems comfortable with the sort of general approach and concepts that we put forward. I think in particular, I think people have taken on board and sort of warmly the idea of the regional protocols. So I think that's the sort of, possibly out of everything that's put in our recommendations, that the use of regional protocols to develop the technical requirements that can be incorporated into national legislation seems to be sort of approved as a concept broadly, but I think we recognise still there's some questions there that need to be resolved as this goes forward, in terms of exactly where these protocols fit within, say, for example, the CARICOM legal machinery, where these protocols, how these protocols are incorporated into the national legislation. We had some discussions yesterday about how automatic that should be. I think my overall impression of those discussions was that they weren't very conclusive, so everybody had a sort of slightly different perspective, which is fine. That means we just need to kind of perhaps clarify the options in our recommendations and take those recommendations forward in this process. It's not the objective of this meeting to decide everything today and finalise it and put it into practice next week. So where we've identified sort of some lack of consensus or some just kind of questions for another day, we can record those. But I think overall that we can say that the procedure was the process and the concept was okay. I think just in terms of the legislation, I think that we sort of, in terms of the gaps, in terms of the protocols, we had some suggestions about perhaps some of the areas the protocols might address that we are either sort of just got to sort of finalise or we hadn't picked up on. So we've got a few gaps to fill there. I think there was a little. I think probably a lot of the comments are about the sort of the Model Act. I think there's still a lack of clear consensus in terms of how the legislation should be taken forward, and I think perhaps providing a little bit more background about our thinking, as Barbados has just suggested, might clarify that. But again, I think that's an area where we need to present some options. But again, I think overall, and I know it was a very, very sort of acknowledged as being in the right direction. It's sort of there's enough sort of confidence and approval of that to sort of take it forward to the next step in terms of recommending, perhaps in our report, that this is the route that should be explored for further development as it progresses to the next stage. And I think one of the key other messages really is that to remember exactly where we are, as Mr. Horton's just mentioned, we're at the very beginning of quite a long, quite an ambitious and a very important process. And there's going to be plenty of other opportunities to revisit all of these questions, including in the ICA project. So when there's the food safety and animal and plant health programs that we've mentioned, they will also involve a regional validation workshop when I expect we'll be meeting a lot of you again. And that's a question at that point where we can also take stock a little bit of the overall kind of concepts that are being developed and check it's consistent as well with what we've worked on in the fishery sector. So it's the beginning of a process. I think we've made good progress in setting out a path that can be explored further, and I think overall that's a very pleasing result for us. But they're my sort of reflections, I suppose, on the meeting. I don't know whether anybody wants to make any comments or disagree with my assessment or whatever it might be, but I think
Yes. Quick comment.
I think that we can while we're trying to capture all the various facets of the global legislation, right? Global legislation is perfect. And again, it has to be built over time. And we have a time constraint. So we have to take that into
Thank you. Quick comment from TheCRFM.
Okay, I understand now, Chairman, that we're on the final item, which is the way forward. So I'm mindful that we have spent our time and that the hotel need this room for another function. So we have to be over here in the next 10 minutes or so. So in terms of the way forward, we expect to get the revised documents from the consultant by early next week, say next Tuesday, we can agree on next Tuesday, incorporating the comments and so on that are in here. We will circulate the revised documents to all of you by Wednesday, so next Wednesday. We will give you 1 week to submit any comments, additional comments you may have on those documents. And everything in this consultancy, this set of consultancy, everything needs to be wrapped up before the end of September. So we have a very, very tight time frame. Of course, that's not the end of it, because we're still at the beginning process, the beginning stage of this exercise. Once we have the revised products, we will then need to submit them to the countries now for your consultation, your national consultation, and taking it through your decision-making process before it can be discussed at the regional level. So eventually, these instruments will need to go to the ministerial council, the legal affairs committee, etc. For endorsement approval before they can then be finally submitted to the country for consideration for implementation. So we still have a long way to go, and over the next several months, we're going to be working with you, first of all, to support the national consultation, review a national consultation regarding these various instruments. So I just want to make it very clear that we are at the very early stage in the development of these documents and their eventual implementation, and there will be additional opportunities for input and for getting broader stakeholder input. We do have a fair amount of work to do, and additional work under the SPS project, and quite a lot to be done in the coming months. So in addition to these legal instruments and the coordinating mechanism and the residue and environmental monitoring programs, we have the data collection and monitoring program development, manual and so on, that we discussed. So a fair amount of work still to be done under this project overall to get to where we want. Okay, so that's my submission. We look forward to your continued engagement and input in the process. Thank you very much.
And the final comment from the ladies.
First, I would like to thank Barbados for being an excellent host. And I also like to thank the organizers and the consultants for ensuring that they brought a multidisciplinary set of representation at this workshop to have an intensive review of the documents that have been produced so far. And in that regard, I noted that the country assessment reports are posted online, and in the case of Belize, they require substantial amendments. And my request then is what time frame has been set for countries to review those reports and submit their final comments for the corporation.
I'll just comment on that. There was a few editing issues, shall we say, with the country reports, and we are in the process of revising them. Basically, they'll be included in the set of documents delivered on Wednesday next week. And they're in effect just mission reports, so they shouldn't take too. Shouldn't take too long to review really. But you'll be able to review those along with the other documents.
So we send the comments directly to you.
Yes, actually, they can.
In terms of procedure.
Do you have a protocol, Milton?
My recommendation is that you send the comments to the CRFM. You can copy them to the consultant. We have a responsibility to monitor and to ensure that these are. It is very important that we get the comments, but in order to facilitate the speedy of the concerns, you can also send them to the.
I'll leave a pile of. If anyone hasn't got my email address, they could.
Thank you very much. I noticed that Barbados has a burning comment.
No, I just wanted some clarity on the procedure. When you say that all the documents will be submitted by Tuesday, I know that some of the documents were not complete, and we have not seen some of them which are still in progress. Are we expected to get those documents on Tuesday as well as ones that we already have, and in terms of all that has to be reviewed in the week? Just want some clarity.
Yes, is the answer to that question. Although remember, actually, in terms of the protocols and so on, we're still not really at the stage of needing to look at the comments in detail. So with the protocols, for example, they're provided really at this stage. Partly as the document that needs to be taken forward, but in terms of the review that needs to be undertaken, just as the example of the concept we're creating, because the actual protocols themselves, within the model we've recommended, would need to be submitted to a review process, and which is the process we've defined in the document. So. And that process involves, in the first place, a review by a steering group with CAFSA and the other regional organisations. Then it's submitted for expert review. Then it's submitted to national review. So the protocols themselves will have to undergo a rigorous review exercise before that they're actually adopted. So in a sense, we don't need comments particularly on the actual content of the protocols at this stage, because there will be a time and a place to actually properly review those, and you will all be involved in that review process. But what we do need is sort of just to be able to illustrate, I suppose, at this stage what it is we're recommending, and then also to give the raw materials to that process once it's set up. Does that make sense? No. In what way doesn't it make sense? So what I'm saying is we don't need a sort of word by word review of the protocols. I think it's just the general concept of the protocols and the sort of general coverage and scope of the protocols that we need looking at. But actually, if this process goes ahead as we've recommended, there will actually be a proper review of the protocols once the regional network is set up.
Just a very quick intervention here. One of the things that we need to do, and the consultants, is where there are outstanding issues and where there are differing views, so that we do not sense a consensus as to where we want to go. What we need to do is to capture these, and you may be able to provide some options, put them in square brackets, and we can present some options so that we can get further policy guidance as to where we want to go. So because we have to think about these things somewhere. So I suggest you do that. Now, as I said before, we need to wrap up soon. So let me take this opportunity to thank the consultants for their input. Let me take the opportunity to thank you, the participants, for your contribution yesterday and today, which I think were very, very good. I commend you, the government representative, the private sector representative, the regional organizations, all of you, for your open very useful suggestions and comments and recommendations. So thank you very much. And thanks to the chair, Dr. William, and Joyce and Steve for guiding us through. Thank you very much.
Before I wrap up, I just want to give Aida an opportunity to make any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It will be very quick. It's given times on this sense, but it would be remiss of us if we did, first of all, congratulate the CRFM on hosting a very good consultation. This is just the beginning in terms of getting a strengthening and even framework for fisheries. But one of the things we want to stress is that the fisheries component is one slice of the total SPS pie that the SPS project is trying to strengthen for the CARIFORUM region. And many of the recommendations that were highlighted over the past 2 days will be action under the wider project over 2015-2016. Of significance is the whole issue of the national coordinating systems that will provide technical assistance to countries to put coordinated mechanisms together at the national level and the regional level. And there's also capacity building a number of the key areas that were mentioned on the environmental monitoring plans, such as risk and traceability and mapping. So this is an excellent start, and one of the things as we move forward is for us to be all aware of the bigger picture, and as we go back home, that this does not just become just another meeting, but we look at it as a part of the building block towards strengthening SPS in the region. So thank you very much, and I'll stay through back home.
In wrapping up, thank you very much, Aida. I have a reminder and a caution. The report from session 2, group 2, that report is outstanding. So could you please submit it to Peter Murray or Shirlene? Session 3, the report from group 1, 2, and 3 are outstanding. So could you submit to Peter? Caution, the local Met Office is predicting heavy rains and thunder this evening as a result of the passing of a tropical storm. Some countries in the north, islands in the north, are under storm warning. So if you're going out tonight, be careful. This meeting was a very productive meeting. I think the consultants have a lot of food for thought. I want to congratulate the participants for being on point and allowing us to conclude within our scheduled time. I have been to meetings where the meeting was scheduled to finish at 5 o'clock and like 8 o'clock we were still working. So I want to compliment the participants for being on point and for your cooperation with the chair as well. I want to thank my co-chair, Dr. Wood and Ms. Leslie. I also want to thank the staff of the Fisheries Division for the hard work, especially Ms. Leslie, in organizing this workshop. I'm hoping that you will return, get back to your home safely, and that you will have a safe flight. And by the time you're ready to leave tomorrow, the storm will have passed. So safe journey home. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you.